You are listening to MSP 1337. I'm your host, Chris Johnson, and I'd like to thank you for joining us today. First and foremost, I'd like to thank our sponsor, MSP-Ignite. MSP-Ignite offers a peer group experience that is unique to managed service providers in the technology industry. If you are serious about implementing a model for success through sharing and collaboration of best practices, this is the best way to do it. Head on over to msp-ignite.com to get more information. All right, on to the show. Welcome, everybody, to this episode of MSP 1337. I'm joined this week again by Chad Holstead of BKS Group. Welcome, Chad.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Or is it BKS Team?
It's Business Knowledge Systems, but we go by BKS. So
that sounds like it's a mouthful for sure.
It is.
I assume that is somewhat like what we're going to talk about today, drinking from the fire hose. And the challenges that I think largely are pushed upon MSPs more so than I think the average business, in the sense that it's one thing to have to protect your own business, but when you're responsible for other businesses, it kind of raises the number of fire hoses that they're all being balanced. Before we jumped on, I mentioned that I'm heavily involved in the security community with CompTIA, and one of the conversations we've had is, how do we increase membership? How do we increase participation? And the thought that was running through my head, and you probably can share some sentiments here, is paralysis analysis, or how do I drink from yet another fire hose? What problems is this additional blast that I'm going to get going to help me solve? And can it be proactive, or I'm still going to be reactive? So it got me thinking, couple that with you're part of one of the integrators group with Secure Outcomes that's trying to go through getting your policies and some control mappings done to help improve your security posture. So talk to me, Chad, about what is if you could change one thing in this sort of process, aside from just saying, I don't have to do this anymore, what would it be? Because I think everybody that listens to this podcast is always looking for, how can I reduce effort and still have significant increase in value? Because we're all finite resources. So where would you start?
For me, if I was able to have my dream, take the money out of it, I would need more resources. So as a business owner, as you were correct in your statement, as a business owner, we have all these things that we have to work on: our finances, our corporate culture, you name it, right?
Yeah.
HR. And now as an MSP, we have all of that, plus our own internal security, plus we have all that stuff for our customers too.
Yeah.
So when I sit on these integrators groups, I need help, and getting my team involved is critical. But the problem that we've got is from 9 to 5, that's when we can service our customers. That's when they want our help. Well, my team wants to go home at 5 o'clock. They don't want to stay here from 5 to 9 working on my policies.
Well, that's dumb.
So if I had unlimited resources, that's where I would just need bodies, because then you just throw bodies at the problem.
So let's talk about that for a minute, because I think that's a myth too. And the reason I say that is, I'm heavily involved. I'm a director of the school district here. I have my team start at 7:45, 2 to 3 days a week. Teachers have to be at school at 7:45. They're done with their contract day at 3:45. So my team's like, well, we start and we go from 8 to 4:30. And I'm like, yeah, but when are our clients, when those are our users that need our support, when are they available? And so what's interesting, and I think this is partially a culture problem that we have across all industries, and that is that when I need help, it's only when it's convenient for me. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to work until 8 a.m. I get it, because that's 15 more minutes of sleep time or family time or whatever. I don't care what it is. And then there's the flip side of that is, like you said, we want to go home at 5 o'clock. I think our culture is in a desperate need of a change to say we need to have a more flexible schedule to get those things done, so that they're not sitting right on top of when I need to be on a call with a client or when I need to be, at home, not at work. Because fundamentally, the solution to the problem makes everybody work less because it's been solved, which means the problem isn't there anymore. It's been removed from that obstacle. So getting there obviously is a challenge. So when you say more resources doesn't fix it, because that means your client needs more resources too, right? Because they have their obligations that, fix their printer. Well, if only I had another printer that I could use that worked, while you fix the one that doesn't, it's a never ending, we just keep stacking.
And that's exactly it. I mean, part of it is resetting customers' expectations. But ultimately, I think where I have personally struggled immensely is what is more important today that I need to tackle. And I'm not very good at it. And this is where as a business owner, I've got to get better, is managing my block time. So that when I say that cybersecurity is important to me and I block my calendar, I live by that. That's my problem. I have to deal with that. But I think as business owners, we get shiny thing syndrome.
Yeah.
Right. From noon to 4, I'm going to work on cybersecurity. Well, I get 3 opportunities for discovery calls. I'm not going to work on cybersecurity. I'm going to work on discovery calls because that's what's bringing in more money. So we have a fundamental issue of and that's what the outcomes groups really work great for. They're accountability groups. As long as you're doing something every week, we're making sure that you're working towards a goal. And I think you need somebody to help you with that. That's a piece of that.
Well, I think you said money, no object. I think the reality is, even if money is no object, that doesn't solve the problem. So I think the reality is, us talking about a problem, you're not paying me to talk about that problem, and you're really just giving time to solve something that, because I've given my time to it, you've increased your resource capacity, and hopefully we come to a resolution that has an outcome you're looking for. I think that's something that we're not doing a good job in the industry of tapping resources that can help us solve problems, because we get stuck in I have to pay them, I have to make time for them, all of the reasons, right? It reminds me, are you familiar with the time management, the 4 quadrants of being productive by Stephen Covey?
I am familiar with it, but it's been a while since I've.
So the premise of it, and by no means take this as a Chris follows the Stephen Covey productivity, quadrant. I actually at one point in time had it put on my plate as a requirement as an employee. And then since I've been with the district, I had the idea of what is the quadrant put on my plate to help another team that was struggling with time management. And the thing that comes to mind for me, and this will resonate, and I want you to give me, after I give you the 4 quadrants, where you believe you live the most. Because maybe part of this conversation today is, if we solve part of that, or at least recognize where the problem is, that we can help other MSPs go, oh, I need to shift my effort on time productivity to the things that really matter, instead of allowing myself to get sucked into I like turning a screwdriver, so I'm going to turn a screwdriver. So hear me out. So the four quadrants are, quadrant 1 is the urgent and important. And as MSPs, we believe probably most things that we deal with fall into that category, right?
Yep.
Quadrant 2 is not urgent, but is still important. And then quadrant 3 is urgent, but not important. This is the area you never want to live in. And then number 4 is not urgent and not important. And we only have, to your point, so many hours in the day to consume our capacity. So where do you spend most of your time? Chad, that's the question. Where do you spend most of your time?
So I want to think that I spend it in urgent and important, right? But ironically, I will bet you, if I actually sat down on a very regular basis, I'm spending it in that 3rd quadrant a lot of times.
Right. The quadrant of it is urgent, but
not important. I think I spend it in urgent and important, right? But I'm probably spending a lot of my time, which is why your to-do list never shortens, because if it was urgent and important, it would get crossed off your to-do list, right?
And I would argue that they're often the popular thing to do, right? Because it's in my face. Other people are championing for me to do this thing or things. So I will take, I don't have this memorized, but I happen to know it. So I pulled it up just now, just so that we had it. This is where we all get hung up. And if you don't use a planner and you don't use a good calendar system, maybe your PSA, this is partially why we fail at this time management piece. And that is, the key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities.
Yes.
Thank you, Steve.
And that's yeah. And that's ultimately, block scheduling. I 100% agree with that statement. Do I do it? No. But the other piece of this as a business owner, so you're getting a million things thrown at you. We've talked about the different, CompTIA, ASCII, MSP-Ignite, which we're a part of, Secure Outcomes. I've got my vendors are coming at me, all of these people are coming at me saying, hey, Chad, you've got to do this.
Right.
And then your insurance company, which I watched a webinar last Wednesday that literally I didn't sleep that night, from the insurance company. They're like, you're going to be in trouble. So now I've got all of this pile of stuff, right? And I don't know where to start. It's vapor lock. You don't know where to start. You sit down and you stare at your computer and you go, screw it, I'm going home. So as an MSP, we have to look for these communities as business owners that we can reach out to and go, hey, Chris, here's my pile. No, right. I don't expect you to have the answer, but talk to me for an hour. Help me prioritize that pile. Right.
And you just summed up frameworks, right?
Yeah.
Based on the risk of the control should be changing how you are prioritizing. The problem is that's not the only thing that's being thrown at us, right? Like access control, that's the least of my problems right now.
Well, and that's just, so I called my insurance company after that webinar last Wednesday. I don't know if you watched it or not. And I asked my insurance company, I said, I'm doing 3 things for my business right now with regards to shoring up my security. I'm going through and redoing my framework and my policies. I'm going to go towards CIS.
Sure.
Working through that. It's going to take 6 to 12 months. I am working with my HR team and everything else, and we're doing more end user training for my guys. I'm giving them more cybersecurity training, just overall, ramping up my energy, my team.
Sure.
And I'm going through and having all of my clients re-sign new contracts and new MSAs, master service agreements.
Yep.
And I asked the insurance guy, I said, of those 3 things, which one should I do first? Oh, and by the way, I'm doing a 4th. I'm growing my company.
That's dumb.
Yeah.
I get quoted saying it's dumb. Like, this is the third. Well, that was the 3rd time I said it. So like, this must be prophecy.
Yeah, exactly. So, but which one of those do I do first?
Right.
Do I work on do I scrap CIS controls to go work on my master service agreements? In reality, you do a little bit of everything every day.
Right.
But it's managing that's the struggle. And I think that's where we, as specifically MSP business owners, fail miserably. Because not only are we doing it for ourselves, we're doing it for our customers too.
I'm going to answer your question, even though you didn't ask me to. I'm not going to give you the answer that you're looking for, though, because we talked about this briefly. I said that's, paralysis analysis. So the definition of paralysis analysis is the overthinking, right? It's the, you don't see any course of action that you can decide upon that will either merit the outcome that you're looking for, or that gets you there in a timetable that you're willing to accept. Right. So even if it's subconscious, right? So like, if I think about like answering an insurance questionnaire, it's really easy to look at the questionnaire and go, wow, this is 40 pages long. This is going to be a real bummer to try and answer all of these questions, versus I'm just going to take this 1 page at a time and save as I go, as I have time to get it filled out. I'm working with a company right now that it took them 3 months to answer the questions on an insurance questionnaire to get them a $30 million policy. Like, I'll tell you right now, if the policy is worth $30 million, I have a lot of priorities that just became less so to get that filled out. But that's not where they were at, right? Like, they're in their mind, it's just one more thing that they have to do. So let's throw all the balls up in the air for a minute. We're still talking about, what we need to accomplish. You pointed out, like, if money was no object, or, really at the end of the day, it doesn't have anything to do with money. If, like, you could make one wish, it's like that you have more resources available to help you in the areas that you need help. I think that there's an opportunity here to say, I'm spending too much time prioritizing what is on my plate. You're the business owner. How well are we looking at what's being prioritized as an organization for all of the members that are on your team? That they're never going to prioritize the things that are important to you unless you force them to, which no one wants to do that, because that gets into micromanagement and all the things that are not why you hired them in the first place. But what does the mission of, say, BKS Group look like when we start talking about things like, we want to be security group level 2. We want to get these 6 controls satisfied, not just in our organization, but with all of our clients. And our timetable is between now and July. And your staff goes, man, Chad, that's a really difficult, I don't see how that's possible. And you're like, well, let's break it down. Each of you is going to be responsible for one of these pieces, not getting it done, but being the champion that keeps the rest of us accountable to that control. Now, you aren't the one that's the bad guy. You're not the one that's run out of capacity. You're not the one that has to do all of it. And you've made it very clear. This is about whether or not we stay in business and we continue to grow, and that every one of us on this team is making more money. Because at the end of the day, I don't care how we spend this. I'm not going to do it just to be secure.
And I think that when we circle back to the conversation that you and I had numerous times, how do we get other MSPs to go down those roads, right? The fundamental issue keeps boiling down to resources. I have resources right outside my office. I'm one of the lucky ones that has a mature MSP that we're moving forward with. We're moving at a sloth pace, but we're moving forward.
I've seen Ice Age, just put them on a sled.
Yeah. There are 1- and 2-man shops that literally do nothing but punch the keyboard from 8 a.m. until 6 o'clock at night. And those are the ones that they don't have the extra resources, but those are the ones that struggle immensely and need more secure outcomes type groups to help them.
I will agree and disagree with you at the same time. So I 100% recognize what you said about resource challenge that the 1- and 2-man organization is going to have. The problem is the same with the 1- and 2-man organization as it is with the one that has 2,000 employees. It goes back to what you said about how many things are being thrown at me. And when you start to look at it on the scale, the problem is largely in your face and easily recognizable when it's 2- and 3-person shop, and maybe difficult to find where the lines are in a much larger organization. But the problems are the same. The paralysis analysis is the same. So to your point, I think this is about how do we show the picture that says, step 1, admit that you need help, right? Step number 2, this is no different than an AA program or anything else that says, I have to look in the mirror and recognize that I cannot do this by myself. I cannot do this as BKS Group or my entity. I need help from organizations like CompTIA and ASCII and my peer group, and be willing to accept that I am not necessarily going to be happy with what I'm being told to do, but I'm still going to do it because otherwise I'm back in the same boat I was before I wasted their time.
And I have this on my desk. I'm also a member of Technology Marketing Toolkit. So I have the marketing side of the house too.
Which, if you don't know, that's a Robin Robbins.
Yep. They sent me a postcard before Christmas, and you can't view it on a podcast, but it says, "Don't stay stuck. Here's how to get help." Big bold letters. Don't stay stuck.
Yep.
I have this on my monitor every day to remind myself, when you get stuck, find some help, do something. Sometimes we are the help, right? But the piece of it is you still have that paralysis. And we need to, as a community, I wish there was the ultimate silver bullet would be Chad, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and you'll be successful. And Robin Robbins has it. If you want to be successful in marketing, step 1, step 2, step 3. CIS, Chris has it. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. But now, how you be successful in business? You have to do all of those
right
at the same time.
So I think part of this is, so I remember when I worked full time at Onshore, and I had an office on the upper floor, which is where the executive team was at one end of the hallway, and the other end was sort of some of the directors and team leads. We had offices on the other end. And I remember Stell, who's the owner of Onshore, he was very adamant that we take this for the quadrant approach. And, he wanted us to post on our doors, like, we're open door policy, but like, when should you interrupt me? Right. And I didn't do a good job of supporting him or the initiative that he had with that then, because I was really struggling with time management in the context of what he was getting at. Like, I love the meetings. I love the people interaction, especially when it's one-on-one, not like a large, please give your report on how you've done over the last 3 weeks, right? Not that kind of meeting, like the brainstorming, the ideas, the team building, those kind of, I can get consumed into that. Not paralysis analysis, just the word vomit gets, When I take the quadrant though, and I really break it down. So if I take the important and urgent, this is what they call the crisis and pressing problems, right? We can't avoid those, right? But now I start thinking about like, how do we minimize or reduce those? Because those are like firefighting and how do you get around that? And it's like, be quick to delegate, be quick. I'm terrible at the delegate part because I'm like, I can fix that. And then I start fixing it, right? I haven't even given it. And the more I think about that one, the more I think about collectively us in general. If I called you, Chad, and I was your client and I said, hey, I can't print, the likelihood of you saying, hold on, let me transfer you to the help desk, it's probably not very high. You're going to go, hold on, talk me through your problem. All of a sudden, you've done the opposite of what you should be doing with your time, right? Because we're programmed that way. We came up through the ranks of IT, most of us, with the desire to solve the problem, not pass the buck to somebody else to solve it and be like, oh yeah, can't believe it took Chris 3 hours to fix that. Like, loser. Like, if he would actually delegate, dang it. And then you get into the focus one, which was that second one, which is like the opportunity planning, critical thinking. Like, are we doing those things? Because if we look at the quadrants through those lenses, I think we easily get caught up in the rigmarole of the doing, and we lose sight of where we're taking our organizations, which goes back to what you said, the resource. And like, if money was no object, and I start thinking like, okay, if you look at the 5 domains of NIST, column 1, not column 5, is governance. Like, I talked about it with Sarah, governance for the SMB. I've talked about with Jess Mills, we talked about getting back to the basics. Is my organization on a path today that matches or aligns with the vision and core values that I had when I started this company? Because cybersecurity is now the underlying base that has to get up through everything.
Agreed. And, we're on a cybersecurity podcast, so we're going to talk to that tune, right? The biggest thing that I'm learning right now is that my mission, vision, and values, what it was 5 years ago, because we were talking productivity and team building and bonding and all that kind of stuff, is not what it is today.
Sure.
I've got it all posted on the wall over here at my new office, and I've been staring at it the last 2 weeks, and it's time to rip it off the wall and start over from scratch, because I have to add in things like security and, how we worked since COVID and changing our culture and those kind of things to build that back up and bring that back into focus. And then we can start working on the governance and everything like that. The biggest
I got to
piece,
give a plug to Jess Mills Consulting. So she did the back to the basics. And I will tell you, based on what you're telling me, I would encourage you to schedule 30 minutes with her, because she's not a cybersecurity person, right? She's all about the business basics, from your accounting package to your core mission. And at first I'm like, how does this really apply to cybersecurity and this podcast? And I happened to see a post that she made, and I realized that we lose alignment with core values. We will lose alignment with cybersecurity being a priority. And I think, to your point, if you're questioning what you did 5 years ago with where you're at today, then the cybersecurity component is fluid when it should be static, right? Like, it should be like, it's a thing that has a fluidity to it as far as like, as your organization changes to improve it. But it has to be recognized as something that you focus on, no different than your operations, your financial goals, like all of those things. This is now one of those quadrants, if you will. I guess it can't be a quadrant if you already have 4 things, but it's a key element to being successful with the cybersecurity model. And I think the only reason we are dismissive to the governance column or that domain is almost entirely to the fact that, I would say, 5 years ago, what tool could you have consumed that would have really been powerful in helping with governance or policies or compliance? Maybe a PDF that had framework controls in it, or a good spreadsheet that had them, so you could edit. But I mean, today there's hundreds of tools that can actually help you navigate, that are not static. And, do I have the latest version? All of those things that you didn't have 5 years ago. We haven't seen accounting packages mature recently, right? Like, it's not like, man, have you seen the latest update to QuickBooks? But we use QuickBooks, right? Like,
yeah.
But you start talking about the other stuff, and it's like, oh, there's a maturity there, and I need to use that product. It helps me with the thing that I'm not doing.
The interesting part is probably, I could look it up, but I'm going to say give or take 5 years ago, we lost a client. They terminated our contract. Now, was
that the last time you lost a client?
No.
Oh.
But this one specifically goes to the point. The customer and us, we were not seeing eye to eye, and they came to us and said, hey, we have a request by one of our vendors. What framework are you holding us compliant to? And I said, what's a framework? And they said, you don't know? And I said, I don't. And to be honest with you, nobody in our industry said, maybe you, we're talking frameworks to the level we're talking about them today.
Sure.
5 years ago. Now, fast forward 5 years, and I have read the frameworks and I understand what the frameworks are. But it's a different story.
I was right there with you. So 5 years ago is when I took my job with Onshore, and I got thrown into things like the Baldridge report and the FFIEC and some of this enterprise level, SOC and SOX and big picture frameworks for large entities. And I think that was pre-CIS being something that was being adopted at an SMB level. And so frameworks were really a scary thing, because none of them were really written in a way that made it logical to follow the framework to show security and compliance. And you were in the category of SMB, right? And probably still are. No framework that I have seen was written with the SMB in mind. Even their level 1, like maturity level, isn't written for the 5-man shop. It's written for the 200 plus employees that they're measuring the size of your organization by how many stories the building has. That's not our world. So I hope those of you that are listening that hear some of the dialogue that Chad and I have had about things like frameworks, they're all relevant, but don't try to do everything that's in them. We can help with that. Reach out to us. We'd love to be able to say, hey, if you only do 6 things or 5, here's where I would start. Because once you start getting past the paralysis analysis, once you start realizing that drinking from the fire hose is normal, well, now you can start looking at, okay, I'm going to wait till I can't swallow any more water, but I'm making notes on what's coming at me so that I can go and target those things that actually are reasonable for me to do.
And once you put your energy at it, we talked earlier about Robin Robbins, and the joke is that it is a fire hose. When you sign on with that group, it's like, here is everything. And we did this year, and we made conscious efforts to move down that path. That fire hose is getting easier to drink from. The CIS, when we started with CIS, holy cow, what is a control? And then now we're reading through it. We're on version 8. We're redoing our programs. We're understanding the fire hose is still fire hose.
Sure.
It's just we're able to keep up with it a little bit better.
I mean, isn't email the same way? I mean, when was the last time you went 2 days without checking your email? And you're like, crap, I had 150 to look at yesterday, and now I got 500 to look at today.
Yeah, that's it. Every Monday morning, you spend half the morning just cleaning out Saturday and Sunday because you didn't read the emails.
Exactly. So
you just got to plow through it one step at a time. It ain't easy, but you pick a starting point and go. I agree with the governance thing, though. I think the thing that I'm personally lacking here at my office is a cadence of meeting with my leadership team to say, how did we do on audits this month?
Yeah.
Internal.
Yeah.
How did we do? What does our user report look like? The things that we show to our customer, we never read.
Right.
I have an employee that was fired 3 years ago that I just found was active in our PSA. So,
yay.
He was, he didn't have access to anything because he was on a different side of the house, but still,
I'm not going to go there. I think we've all dealt with that one at least once. Yep. Chad, as we wrap it up, in my mind, I think of one sort of key thing that has been sort of illuminated almost throughout, shining the spotlight on, you got to ask for help. You got to get plugged into groups like CompTIA and ASCII, and don't limit yourself, because you're going to find that one group or another may be more your cadence or style.
Yep.
And don't give up when you've joined one group and you don't really feel like they're meeting your goals or your needs. And then more importantly than those groups is talk to your peers. I can't emphasize this enough. Like, I may be part of and running an advisory group for secure outcomes with the MSP-Ignite peer groups, but it wasn't until I brought people in to the advisory council that I started seeing real change, both for myself and for the organization, because it wasn't me trying to row alone. And I think everybody who, if you're listening to this, you can't do this well by yourself.
No, you cannot. Get some help, get some people that you can talk to. That's all it's about.
Chad, any last words for those listening?
No, I think you summed it up right there. Find some help, talk to people, talk to your peers. That makes a world of difference and will keep you motivated going forward.
Well, there you have it, everybody. This has been an episode of MSP 1337. Thanks and have a great week.